She came out of the building and he shot her. And then he shot himself. Murder-suicide to start the whole family. I guess I should have opened it with that.
Welcome back to Family Twist. We often say that family secrets aren't always about who your family is. Sometimes they're about who your family believed they had to become.
That's exactly what today's conversation is about. Our guest, author Joan Moran, grew up believing she knew her family's story. Then just before she married into a Jewish family, her mother sat her down and shared something that had been hidden for years. Their family was Jewish.
At first glance, you might think this episode is simply about religion. It's not. It's about identity, history, and it's about understanding why someone would spend a lifetime protecting a secret that, from today's perspective, doesn't seem like it should have been a secret at all.
Joan's mother lived through a time when antisemitism shaped careers, friendships, neighborhoods, and everyday decisions. As you'll hear, hiding part of who she wasn't about shame, it was about survival.
Listening to Joan, I couldn't help thinking about how many stories we've heard on this podcast. Different circumstances, different generations, but the same questions keep coming up. What happens when someone decides the truth is too dangerous to tell? And what happens to the next generation when they finally learn it?
We also found ourselves talking about my own DNA discovery. Even though our stories are very different, there were so many parallels about identity, family narratives, and realizing that one conversation can completely reshape how you see yourself.
Whether your family secret involves adoption, donor conception, a DNA surprise, hidden ancestry, or something else entirely, I think you'll find pieces of yourself in this conversation.
Here's our conversation with Joan Moran, author of Suddenly Jewish.
My story was quite remarkable, I think, in terms of its trajectory throughout all of these. And I'm 82, so I'll probably be 83 in November, guess. And so it's been a very interesting life, very long process. My mother was an incredible woman, except for this tiny little thing. And I understand historically why she hid that. Because A, she was a woman, wasn't going to get anywhere except to be somebody's secretary, which that wasn't going to be her ultimate fate in the work world. So she carved out her own life, sans religion, tribal, anything tribal. She was her own woman, free to call one. She was always interested in learning. When I went to high school, she was going to Marin Junior College. This was in San Rafael, across from the bridge, because I come from San Francisco. I didn't mention that, but I was born there. My brother was born there. My father was born there, but my mother was born in Toronto and was raised in Montreal. I guess I'm skipping ahead, but so I just love the fact that she was an educator. She ended up by teaching home economics. She was a clothes designer, in addition to being an expert typist and all of the wonderful things. And she was not stay at home, she wasn't a stay. And I was in high school and I would be studying, and she was at San Francisco State University and she'd be studying, and we'd trade set topics and subjects. And she was, even though she probably didn't love the Catholic Church, my father didn't either. He wasn't strict, but we went to Catholic school and she would quiz me in catechism, which when I look back on it, I thought it was hilarious. If I had known a little bit sooner, she wouldn't have had to do that, but she didn't care, But I would like to just start with at the beginning of the story, because it does reflect today many things that happened in the 20s and 30s. So I call this a historical memoir, because you can't have my mother without the historical background. It doesn't work. And so my grandparents, one of them on my mother's side, my mother's mother was born in the Odesa, and it was the Ukraine at the time, but then it always flipped back from Russia to the Ukraine. That's a history of that country. And my great grandfather was extraordinarily successful. He had a confectionery business, and when there was always a pogrom somewhere right behind them, and my grandfather felt that it was going to come, so he, sooner than later. So he went to London to look at property in order to put his shop there. And there wasn't much anti-Semitism, in the UK. That wasn't their deal. They weren't interested in that. They were interested in developing business, somewhat like San Francisco. When they were working in San Francisco, basically Levi Strauss, put the business in San Francisco. And so that was kind of, they saw opportunities through their history. So my grandmother Rose married Jacob Lanchiski, changed it to Lanch. She should never have married him, but she was a real smart lady also. Very, very cool. I love my grandmother did it. My grandfather was a labor organizer, Jewish guy from the Krakow, who was at 50 was a designer and worked for Balenciaga in Paris. He hopped the train, went in, auditioned, got his design work done, and then it was like they weren't going to promote it. A Jew from Krakow, that was never going to happen. He left and went to London and then hopped the ship and worked the ships from Canada to the UK. So that was his trajectory. Met my grandmother at the setting of where she worked, which was an embassy. She worked at an embassy. That didn't work out, but he was very famous. His name is on the plaque in, I think it wasn't Manitoba, maybe it was Ottawa, but he was a labor leader and he knew Dubinsky, who was our labor leader in the U.S., and Dubinsky wanted him to go to work for him. And he said, no, I'm not. He was very stubborn, but he was a designer his whole life, from clothes, and he ended up by being a furrier. My grandmother divorced him finally, and her sister was in San Francisco, and she took my mom and my aunt, Millie, and went to San Francisco and started a whole new life in the Fillmore. But I want to backtrack for 1 minute because the whole life started in tragedy. My great-grandmother wanted to divorce him because he was a scoundrel. Not business-wise, but, he's a womanizer. And she had it, and I think they had 9 kids in that family. And at the beginning of this story, you see my great-grandfather possessed with the fact that my great-grandmother was going to divorce him. And she was at a lawyer's in London, downtown London. She came out of the building, and he shot her. And then he shot himself. Murder-suicide to start the whole family. I guess I should have opened it with that, but it's still a pretty powerful scene. So you see everybody picked up from there. My grandmother finished her secretarial studies to work at the embassy, and all the brothers and sisters were there. Some went to the United States, some went to New York, some went to Canada. There were Canadians. And so they spread all over the place. And some stayed in London. I met them through years of travel. My mom would take me to meet cousin so-and-so and cousin so, and then we didn't get the royal treatment from her relatives or cousins. It was just like an unfortunate thing that happened. It started off on the wrong foot, it ended up on the right foot. Let's put it that way. San Francisco is where they met and where my mother was taken to a YMCA dance. Funny thing, where my father was, who couldn't dance. And my mother was a terrific dancer, of course. And they met. They were married for, God knows, 50-something years. And it wasn't easy to marry an Irish Catholic. But he was a wonderful man. He just loved her. That was love. Absolute 100% love. The way that Suddenly Jewish, the book that I wrote, is historical in the sense that we had to have a backdrop, not just of World War I, when she was going to school, high school, but also the Ku Klux Klan, the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the early 1920s. It went all the way through. And then we have fascism. And my parents were very well read, and they knew exactly what was going on. And my mother chose deliberately not to hide, to be. She was herself. Yeah, it got kicked out of the cotillion in Marin County. Yeah, she was fired from a job because some guy found out she was Jewish. It didn't, she just moved on. She just moved on. I was raised in Catholic school by the nuns. My mother never went and talked to a nun. Looking back, I think it was hilarious. Never talked to a nun. Never went to school. I was on my own, So always supportive, as my brother was. He just passed a few years ago. And one time he said to me, he said, I wish we had been raised Jewish. And I thought that was really profound. He knew before I knew. He got on that road before. He never told me he didn't want to disrupt my life. Instead, my mom, I had transferred from UCLA to Berkeley and was dating a law school student at Berkeley in the 60s. That's where we were. Living the life. And he was Jewish. And, I hadn't met so many Jews at UCLA because I'd been there for a year and a half. But when I went there, I didn't know what a Jew was. We had one kid in our Catholic school named Phil Goldberg. Someone said it was Jewish. And we all looked around and went, okay, whatever. So this guy that I met was everything. He was a beatnik. In those days, it was beatniks. That was for me. I was a theater major and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to teach at college and I wanted a PhD or so, maybe 2, I don't know. But that's where I was. So my mom met him, my dad met him. And then I was 19, it was summer and I was going to go into the junior year and my mom sat me, she walked in my room and she said, okay, I'm going to sit down. Okay. I have to tell you something. Okay. Your grandmother was Jewish. I'm like, Mom, it doesn't skip a generation. Touchline. She said, I don't care. I don't care. I said, well, suddenly I'm Jewish, right? Sorry, I'm Jewish. She goes, you can be whatever you want to be. So those are the takeaways of that life. And what I did after that was embrace my husband to be and embraced who I was because I kind of always knew I was something else. Even though I was a really good Catholic, I like rituals, not necessarily doctrine. Pretty tough for me to swallow a couple of those things because it's mythology. And once you take it as mythology, that's not the meaning of it. It transcended into who you are. And just a friend of mine just sent me it was a comedian who had the opening line was, I did the ancestry, I did the genealogy, and it said, it turns out that I'm 97% Ashkenazi Jew. And of course, it was a laugh line because she's not 100%. What's the other 3%? And so the comedy was in, what else am I? And how come I paid $100 to find out what I already knew? It was so terrific. And it reminded me like, I'm Ashkenazi, but when you're a Jew, you're a Jew. Okay, so my father's is all Irish. But the tribe, Irish is religion. I mean, it's Catholicism. It comes from a country. So you could be Ukraine and a Jew. But this was something else. This was, I'm living this. Married the Jew, raised my kids as Jewish, and all my 5 grandchildren are Jewish. It meant something to me that I wanted to carry on a line. That's what this was. And the question is, was I angry at him? For a while I was. I didn't understand why she had to hide now. But she was raised in different circumstances where it was always look behind your back. She lived in a city that was extraordinarily conducive to who she was. San Francisco was the best. And that's where I hung out most of the time. So my whole experience was completely different. And so at the end of it, my mom was still just kicking around and she was wonderful. Couture designer, had all those skills, taught senior aerobics, almost to the day she died. And it was to watch that woman live a full life, despite the fact that she was of the tribe. It didn't bother me that much. I forgave her because I understood it. I have to look at everything historically. And that's it. Anyway, I'll leave you if we haven't got any questions.
Well, it's funny. The only reason that we're not talking to you from the Bay Area right now is because we found Kendall's birth family and we moved all the way across the country to New England.
Yeah, we lived in the Bay Area for 9 years. And in 2017, Corey got me a DNA kit. And my sister-in-law got my brother, whom I didn't know, a half-brother, got him his kit. And we immediately matched. He'd been looking for me since 1988. And yeah, I suddenly found that, well, my parents were 15 and 16 when I was born. So that's why I was given up. But just, I found out suddenly that they were both still living. They didn't stay together, but they went on to have other children with other people. So after feeling like an only child for 47 years, I suddenly had 6 half siblings and 13 nieces and nephews. And yeah, we moved here.
Kendall was raised in Arkansas. I was raised in Missouri. So landlocked, being able to live on the coast still is wonderful. I'm looking forward to the beach days already. But that's it. It's been a challenge. And one of the things I think that has helped us not go completely insane is becoming part of these communities. I'm in the supportive spouse role, but I'm part of this organization called Right to Know, which is all about support and educating people through their DNA surprises, And it's interesting, Kendall's 2.7% Ashkenazi, but a lot of people in these discoveries find out that they're 50%. A good friend of ours, Cara, who started the Right to Know organization, thought she was a half African-American, and then come to find out that her dad wasn't her dad, and she's half Jewish. And she's totally embraced that over the handful of years.
The thing about Jewish is, and I kind of object to this, someone would say, oh, I'm half Jewish. I said, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be half. And Jewish is an identity.
Right.
Jewish is not, and it's not necessarily a religion. You have to carry around the Torah.
Right.
And you don't have to be bar mitzvahed. Like one of my second sons, he said, I don't want to be bar mitzvahed. The other one, bar mitzvahed, but they know they're Jews. And, you are, in the existential sense, you're a Jew. Without all the rules and rituals and the Adonai and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You are that identity.
Yeah.
So, no about you. Well, you're 2%?
2.7.
2.7. Yes.
Well, don't leave that out, as that comedian once said. Every little bit counts.
It's like my big toe or something, right?
I don't know if you could go to Israel. I mean, you may be able to go. I mean, I could go. I could be I could get a passport or whatever, but in Canadian passport. But I'm not interested at this particular point. I think it's what you feel, and what you identify with. And I think that getting your genealogy, especially in your sense, was absolutely the most important thing of your whole life. The most important thing. Because look at the secrets people hide. Look at that. And family secrets are dangerous to hold. And this is why I wrote my book. I threw it out there. This is my identity. Nobody knew. I mean, I live in Austin now. I came from LA. I was in LA for 30 years. And that's easy. It's easy to be a Jew in LA. They say, if you're not Jewish, they go, you're not Jewish? What are you doing? So I love your story. I want to read that book.
We moved here because my father and 2 of his other 3 children live here, and just instant connection with them all. And yeah, so it's been wonderful. The family is why we're here.
So Joan, rewinding a little bit, when you were talking about your mother as a young person and as headstrong as she was, and then talking about like why she kept this hidden, I was thinking, well, that doesn't make sense to me. But then I'm thinking like, well, look where we are today, the antisemitism, that it's just in your face constantly.
Yep.
It would be the same story today or 1931, 32. It would be the same story. That's what's frightening. That's what, and it's deja vu all over again. And she would be the same way. She would be unrelenting the same way. And I get it now more than ever. I'm not afraid of it, but it's the hatred. It's disgusting. And the crimes in this, the statistics are unbelievable of anti-Semitism in this country right now. Probably the worst it's ever been. So it's like, you have to just be vigilant and be strong and know this is the state of the state. Now, it might flow another way.
And I hope it isn't cyclical. Like, it feels like we've done a 180, and hopefully we'll never do that again. Once we come out of this period of idiocy is what I call it.
Yes, I agree. I don't know that I agree with the 180. I think it's always been under the surface. It's just it's not been politically correct to be overtly anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
But clearly it's not like one day somebody woke up and said, I loved Jews yesterday, but today.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Well, we have a disjunctive problem with Israel that compounds the anti-Semitism. And we didn't have that before. It wasn't anything, after the war. Until after the war, 48. So I don't think that we have. I think we have a harder hill to climb. That I don't think I'll see the end of it. In terms of my life expectancy, I think that it will still be there, and I don't know why. Somebody asked me, why do people hate the Jews? And I said, the Jews were traditionally very successful business people. They were the Shylocks. Shakespeare had it. So there was a jealousy, a competitiveness that people, but they don't understand how the Jews strive. They strive. This is the best word I can think of. Me too. My brother too. And you can see, even my nephew, who probably doesn't even know that he was, I don't think my brother even told him, but even he is a striver and a worker. And when you're out there doing that, and people see that, and you get money for that, and you get, status with that, that's why there's still country clubs that won't accept Jews. In LA Country Club. So I learned a lot. And I just think you just have to be present and just be vigilant and be proud of who you turned out to be.
Were you able to have conversations with your mother about why she was looking over her shoulder, why she was scared?
It's hysterical. She was the only Jewish girl in a Catholic school in Montreal. They moved to New York. She had to go to another Catholic school. She's surrounded by people of other religions. Then they moved to LA, out in the boondocks in Gardena with the weeds. And they were the only Jews everywhere they went except LA. Then my mother quickly, when she figured out that louse that she was married to wasn't going to ever be there or be nice, he was an anti-Semite. He forbade her to light the candles on Friday night.
Really?
There's a scene in the book where he comes in and massacres the candles, and he's abusive, and my mother was hiding down the hallway watching this stuff go on. So my mother was never going to be in that situation. Mm-hmm. She knew it, 10. She knew it. So when she told me about, I deduced, she didn't come out and say to me, answer your question. She didn't say, was this specific or this specific, but it was an aura of unaccepting, which she wasn't accepted. She wanted to be accepted. So if you're the other, what happens to you? Even if you're 3%, missing 3% Ashkenazi, which I think is hilarious. You still, why am I not 100? And they said, the genealogy, they said, oh, you're 3% other. That's woman. Loaded technology. Just other.
I know. It's like, are we counting Martians? Like, what is it? Comical to me too.
So we never had the come to Jesus conversation. If you're asking that, we had a conversation surrounding it. It was a minimum conversation on the bed when she laid that one on me. And I said, why are you telling me now I'm going to marry Jerry? And she said, well, I just thought you should know. Oh, you should know, because I'm married into a Jewish family. And the Jews were not asked to Thanksgiving for a while. Wow. Until I told my mother to knock it off.
Yeah.
We went to Vegas for 18 years, and there was a very big Jewish community, so it was cool. Mostly Jews. And so finally they got to come to Thanksgiving dinner, and it was great, and it was fun. It's just a barrier from all those of not wanting to associate. And it took me a long time to understand it completely and accept. At my second son's wedding in Santa Monica, she came with my brother, and she sat gloriously in this sofa chair at this hotel in Santa Monica and had the best time ever. And there was a female rabbi, and it was just her courtship.
Thankfully, she got to do that. To your point, that ritual is so important.
It's not a belief system.
Right.
It's a ritual. You go to Sunday brunch, or it's Father's Day today. So I go and take Aaron and my granddaughter to breakfast, and
Yeah.
it's a ritual, and you want to be in that ritual. And I make my here because Aaron doesn't practice. He knows all his Hebrew. He went to Hebrew school, so I make them do their. I said nope, it's Rosh Hashanah, it's Hanukkah. We're going to sit down and we're going to do it, and I'm going to make a brisket, and you're going to eat it.
I love it.
Joe, did your brother keep it from you and that was a way of trying to protect you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you hold any resentment toward him because of that, or?
No, I thought he was wonderful. I miss him terribly.
I bet. Sure.
Terribly. He always read my book. He always here. Send it over. Let me read it. He was my biggest support and fan, and he was a great piano player. He played in some of the hotels, piano,
wow.
And yeah, he could do that. We started off taking piano together. My mother put us in tap, and we had a routine when we were I think I was like 10 and he was 12. I don't know, but he did magic and we tap danced, and we took that routine all over San Rafael.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, yeah, and it was like so my mother, it was so dull,
That's so fun.
And she changed her name, by the way. It used to be Esther. She changed it to Estelle because it was too Jewish.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely associate that with Judaism, but they're both nice names, right? But
Of course they are.
it's the motivation. You have to think about what she was living through.
Yeah.
Well, as we've said already, I mean, the book is arriving at a very interesting time. What do you hope Jews and non-Jews take away from the book?
Well, I've had some interesting experiences, as you might well know, and non-Jews love it because everyone has a secret. This transcends the message is transcended through generations, through different types of people. It could be read all over the world, and whenever they, oh my God, I had that experience. And hey, I found out I was X. So it's not just about being a Jew. The Jewish people, I don't think I've had a particularly good success rate with speaking and going to temples and that the Jewish Book Council out of New York. I don't know what it was. I don't know if they were afraid of the title. I don't know if they wanted it to be my story, but I was the third person in the book. There's my mama, and there's my mom, and there's me, and it's 3 generations. I don't know what it is, but anybody who does read it, I get wonderful response. It just didn't grab, if I had been on the speaking circuit, yeah, maybe, but I wasn't choosing. Somebody else was, and I was a member of the National Council of Women, Jewish Women. Anybody who has read, including, I always love the responses from people who aren't Jewish and that one person said, oh my God, I learned so much about Judaism from this. And she was thrilled. So you see, it's a different kind of thing, but it's a good story.
Well, and I think you hit upon it pretty well in that it's family secrets tend to be a generational thing. Like they just keep happening. Like, and even when in our experience, it's still happening. And I feel like you haven't you haven't said this exactly, but like the secret stops with my generation. I feel like that's where you are.
Yeah. And whatever I know what my oldest son will do in terms of being religious, because he is, and my youngest son will be who he is. And I had to I was a little ticked off at him for not wanting a bar mitzvah, but they can only go so far.
Right.
But he knows he's a Jew, and he still can speak his Hebrew, so that's fine.
So the final question that we always ask on the podcast is, when you were going through the tough times, or when you were going through the process of writing the book, is there a song or a musical artist or a genre that you leaned on?
We asked because we're such music lovers. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I studied music forever. And my grandson's going to Berklee School of Music next semester. Got in.
A friend of ours, their son just graduated from Berkeley last year.
He wants to be a music producer. And he also creates his own music. He writes his own music for himself and plays it and has a whole studio in his room. It's perfect for him. It's great.
Yes.
That's a tough one. It was a long period of time. The first 19 years, of course, was rock and roll. So it was Elvis, but that wasn't help. I didn't have any issues in those days. So, I wish I could give you Neil Diamond.
Oh,
because, I was in Vegas for 18 years when all these people played and I'm really bad on this question. It was a really good question.
And Kendall's right. The reason we ask it is that, we've got music constantly playing. Like we bonded over our love of music, and he's introduced me to a lot of different artists. I've introduced him to different artists. And so, we just thought that.
I think I do say I saw Neil Diamond opening in Vegas, and when he came out on stage, it was really electric, and I like the lyrics to his songs.
Yeah.
So I can get there. It's terrific. I can get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so funny because I just finished and published another book called Up from Hell, which is a crime fiction. And the protagonist's name is Neil. And his mother named him after Neil Diamond.
That was one of my favorite concerts I've ever seen. It was incredible. And
he's Jewish.
And I don't know if I've mentioned this in the podcast or not, but when I was 21 over Thanksgiving holiday, I came down with spinal meningitis and woke up in the hospital 5 or 6 days later and trying to take the tube and stuff out of my throat and everything. And what was on The View was Neil Diamond was a guest on The View. And so I had the opportunity to interview him, and I was able to tell him that story, and he was really touched by it. And that's just a nice touchstone to that crazy experience.
I also felt with Neil that he is almost like spoken word. And nobody spoke him to, in his song, in his voice. So it's funny, it just came up, and I think that's probably the closest to a performer in those days that meant something to me.
Yeah.
I love Sinatra. I grew up at the Sands Hotel with the Rat Pack, so I'm pretty familiar with that genre of music.
Yeah.
I loved, more than Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. was just like incredible. You go back in time, and then you have that feeling.
My adoptive parents were born in the 30s, and they went to Sands as often as they could and loved it. And that was totally their vibe, and it rubbed off on me very early on.
And I played piano, and I played all those songs. So it wasn't anything. I knew all the music, all the lyrics, everything.
Wow.
And so I can still sing them. In Austin, we got a band that's like Sinatra, he comes out and the whole band, and it's that whole genre that he has, and we dance to it. And I know all the words. And one guy said to me, "I know all these words." And I said, "Because I'm old."
I'm so thankful that my parents introduced me to all that. I mean, I'm a huge jazz lover and blues, and that's strictly because they played it all the time.
Oh, born and raised in San Francisco, I used to hang out in Columbus Avenue.
Yeah.
And the jazz places were there, Finocchio's and Carol Doda and all those places. As teenagers, we'd drive the car there, and that's where we'd just walk City Lights bookstore. So that was my hood, because there's nothing in San Rafael. You never went on a date in San Rafael. There was nowhere to go, nothing to do except live. And in a very conservative Republican enclave where my parents were Roosevelt Democrats. Well, that didn't work out real well.
I was fortunate that my hometown was near Memphis, and so I was on Beale Street.
Oh, great.
Often, yeah.
That's fabulous.
My parents took advantage of being so close, and I can't even tell you how many times they saw Elvis perform, In fact, that was my very first concert. They took me when I was 3 to an Elvis concert. I had to wear little earplugs because it was, somewhat loud, but my love for.
Saw Elvis's last performance at the Sahara.
Oh, wow.
Very last, very tragic.
Yeah.
Except you could still hear his voice through that. He still had the best balls ever.
Yeah. Wow.
He was-
Beautiful.
I've lived a great life. I'm very grateful for my life. I'm grateful for how my family supported me and everything I wanted to do. Writing this memoir was putting the finishing touches on a life well lived, I think. And I think everybody should be grateful for what they have in their lives. It's
Definitely.
all good. It's all good.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you being so open to sharing your story and putting it out into the world. And hopefully the feedback continues to be all positive.
I can't thank you enough. This is so much fun.
Oh, good.
I feel you should take this to the coffee shop next door.
For sure.
All right. Don't be too far away. I will always remember this, and I'll always be grateful to you guys for doing. It's made me so happy.
Oh,
good.
thank you.
Good. One thing I kept thinking about during this conversation is how often people keep secrets because they believe they're protecting someone they love. Sometimes they're protecting themselves, sometimes they're protecting their children, but those decisions can echo for generations.
That's something we hear over and over from our guests. The circumstances may be completely different, but the emotional questions are often the same. Who am I? Where do I come from? And why wasn't I told the truth?
I also appreciated that Joan didn't paint her mother as a villain. Once she understood the historical context, she understood the fear. That doesn't erase the pain of keeping the secret, but it does add compassion to the story.
And that's something we hope Family Twist does every week. These stories aren't about assigning blame. They're about understanding people, understanding history, and making sure future generations don't have to carry the same burdens in silence.
If Joan's story connected with you, we'd love to hear from you. Maybe your family has a hidden chapter. Maybe you've uncovered something through DNA testing, or maybe you've spent years trying to understand why certain things were never talked about.
Be sure to check out Joan Moran's book, Suddenly Jewish, if you'd like to learn more about her family's incredible journey.
And if you're enjoying Family Twist, subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing the podcast with someone who loves true stories really helps us continue bringing these conversations to more people.
Thanks for spending part of your day with us.
Until next time,
remember, family secrets are the ultimate plot twist. The Family Twist podcast is presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications and produced by Mosaic Multimedia, LLC.